Alex Pereira is one of the biggest fan favourites in MMA right now and is widely regarded as one of the pound for pound best fighters in the world, despite only making a permanent move from kickboxing to MMA around 3 years ago. Pereira was a two-weight glory kickboxing champion with a knockout win over Israel Adesanya on his record before he joined the UFC, which meant his signing sparked a lot of excitement among fans at the time, and he has only lived up to and even exceeded most people's expectations in the UFC since then. The brunt of Pereira's offensive striking game consists of a left hook, a jab to the body and an outside calf kick. His left hook is often telegraphed, but he still regularly hurts and knocks out his opponents with it, mostly thanks to his freakish power and his timing rather than his technique or setups. He uses his body jab to not only chip away at his opponent's gas tank, but also to condition them to drop their hands and leave an opening for him to land his signature left hook. His fight against Sean Strickland was a textbook example of this. Pereira's outside calf kick is easily his most impressive weapon. He typically doesn't set them up with feints or strikes, but he also doesn't telegraph them because he uses a unique technique where he only slightly pivots on his lead foot and uses minimal hip turnover. The trade-off with this technique being hard to see coming is that it's poor for generating power, but Pereira can afford this because of how much power he naturally possesses. Pereira also mixes in some jabs, straights, lead and rear head kicks, round kicks and front kicks to the body, and lead outside calf kicks, so he is a multifaceted kickboxer. Pereira is a dangerous offensive striker, especially relative to his poor competition, but the defensive aspect of his striking game leaves a lot to be desired. Pereira uses a low guard combined with minimal head movement. His reactive pocket defense is awful, and the only layer of pocket defense he reliably uses is a shoulder roll and a frame. So when his opponents extend their combinations and put him on the back foot with them, they typically land clean on Pereira as he retreats in straight lines, leans back with his chin in the air, and doesn't even use his hands to try defend punches. Pereira's chin consistently saves him in these situations. Due to these flaws, Pereira is particularly vulnerable when backed against the fence because he's left with no more space to retreat into. He often looks like a sitting duck when this happens and resorts to recklessly swinging hooks in an attempt to hurt his opponent and escape the situation. Pereira being backed against the fence is a common theme in fights where his opponents try to pressure him with punch combinations because his ring craft is poor. Not only does he retreat in straight lines when pressured, but he doesn't reliably use tools like feints, strikes or pivots to regain control of the centre of the octagon either. It's for these reasons that Pereira is extremely fortunate to have not had to fight a single good pressure fighter in his career so far. The biggest hole and liability in Pereira's overall game goes without saying, and that's his defensive grappling. As Pereira was a professional kickboxer for over 9 years before fully committing to MMA, he joined the UFC with little to no grappling skills. Throughout his first handful of fights in the UFC, he didn't seem to show any improvements. He was taken down multiple times by Andreas Michailidis and Bruno Silva, and he basically took himself down by desperately attempting an Soto Gary throw with double overhooks against Adesanya. Pereira showed some improvements in his fight against Jan Blachowicz with extremely basic grip fighting and rear naked choke defense, but that's about it, and he hasn't shown any improvement since then. His ability to sprawl and defend takedowns against the fence is still awful, and his bottom game isn't particularly good either. On top of his major defensive striking flaws, Pereira's major grappling flaws haven't been fully capitalised on either, as he still hasn't fought a competent grappler outside of a 40-year-old Blachowicz at altitude who he nearly lost to. Overall, it's safe to say that Pereira's reputation as a fighter is heavily inflated due to the nature of his wins as well as his poor and stylistically favourable competition, failing to punish him for his many major striking and grappling flaws.